Hello and welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Live. It's going to be me and Chris today as my co-host Q is out. But we're going to go through it. We're going to talk about the news of today and everything that's happening in the Bitcoin space. Chris, whenever you're ready, hop in, man. Let's go into it. Lots of news over this 4th of July weekend that has happened recently. How you doing?
Doing well. Happy 4th of July to UP and happy Canadian Day to all our Canadian listeners. I know it's a little late. It was July 1st, but happy 4th of July, man. I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing great. Yeah, man. Lots to talk through. Let's dive
Definitely.
into it. What is the most exciting thing that has happened in your mind over the last, let's say, 72 hours?
I
Over
think
the
turning
weekend
Peter
even.
Schiff into a Bitcoin maximalist potentially is
Oh,
the most exciting thing in the world.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
I don't know if you heard about this.
Take us through it. Take us through it.
So over the weekend, Peter Schiff had his banks closed. So he is obviously a fund manager. So he lives in Puerto Rico, but the Puerto Rican regulators actually closed down Peter Schiff's bank accounts that actually had his customers' assets in them. So under the guise of not meeting net minimum capital requirements, is what they were saying. I'm not too familiar with hedge funds and how that works, but I'm assuming basically you need to have a net minimum amount of cash in there. And I don't know if he's moving assets around or whatnot, but ultimately they closed his accounts. Other people actually in Cafe Bitcoin this morning were speculating that he didn't disclose under proper KYC or AML laws that if one of his clients was moving money in and out of his fund and if something weird was happening, it was an issue with not meeting basically anti-money laundering rules or KYC regulations. This is just a speculation, but they don't know. I mean, they could close down for net minimum requirements. They can close down for any number of reasons. The regulators of Puerto Rico actually have not commented yet. Peter Schiff is obviously claiming no fault of his own. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Pete, what are your thoughts?
I mean, the irony is staggering here. So Peter Schiff, notorious gold bug, has been shitting on Bitcoin forever. He loves to, uh, you know, just fight with Bitcoiners constantly. His frame, of course, is that gold is the only sound money and that Bitcoin is just this crazy fad, which is hilarious. It's part of his brand. It's part of how he brings in more followers. But he's, a favorite punching bag of the Bitcoin space, and it is amazing that his bank account in Puerto Rico has been shut down. This is an incredibly strong case for Bitcoin, right? The whole idea of Bitcoin is that it disintermediates the process of transferring and storing value. So if you have your money with a bank, you are beholden to them, and at any time, for any reason, or rather for specific reasons, which they can shift and change, and they can surprise you with, your access to the value, the money that you have earned fairly can be taken away from you. And it is incredibly, the Schadenfreude is just massive here. That someone who is such a famous, popular person who shits on Bitcoin just experienced in real time the reason that Bitcoin is so important. It removes the need for banks and financial institutions, and it brings the power of controlling your own destiny financially into the hands of the people. So, man, if this is not a case for Bitcoin, I don't know what is. Some people I was talking to were like, "Oh my gosh, is Peter Schiff finally going to embrace Bitcoin?" No, he's fucking not. His entire business is built on him not embracing Bitcoin and arguing that gold is the only answer. But it is very, very funny. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I'll just quote Peter Schiff himself here. So this is one of his tweets in response to what happened. Despite no evidence of crimes, Puerto Rico regulators closed my bank anyway for net capital issues. Rather than allow a sale to a highly qualified buyer promising to inject capital far in excess of regulatory minimums, as a result, accounts are frozen and customers may lose money. I'm not sure if that means that they could just keep the funds, but I think that this is to Bitcoin's ethos. Trusted third parties are a security risk. whether that's Peter Schiff, whether that's a bank in the United States, whether it's a bank abroad, whether that's a lending platform like BlockFi, Celsius, or whatever. If you are trusting another party to do anything, it's a risk. Even to Bitcoin's ethos, like you download Blue Wallet or Moon Wallet or any of these different platforms. If you do not check the code, which I am not a coder or a computer science major, and I do not understand code that well. I understand the principles of it, but checking it myself is very difficult. I don't go line by line and say like this line says that. It's something that you can do, and that's they advocate for free and open source software. But that is a risk too. I mean, I know even just not to bash on Blue Wallet, but I like them a lot. But they were having issues with their custodial Lightning wallet just a couple, like I'd say 4 or 5 weeks ago, where people were having like it would said funds in transit, but then the funds would return to you because they couldn't find a way to route around it. So they're having issues with their custodial Lightning network. Pete, I don't know if you want to add to that. Basically, anything I said there.
Well, I think that it's a spectrum, right? So there is a massive difference between using a centralized bank or a centralized authority that can shut down your funds for any number of reasons, right? And the problem, one of the big problems, is that what tends to happen over and over again through history is that these centralized systems are used to kind of control the destinies of the people. So when basically the government decides that its own interests or the people that are in power's interests do not align with people having, their access to their finances, the banks will come up with a reason for basically limiting that access. We saw this in Canada with the sorry for the dog barking. We saw this in Canada with the Freedom Convoy and any number of other things throughout history that just continues to happen. So, to your point about Blue Wallet, it again, it's a spectrum, right? So one of the values, I don't actually think that everyone needs to understand how to code and to be able to read through line by line. By having software that is ideally open source, you basically create a situation where more people, more eyes from people that are extremely qualified are able to, really sink their teeth into what's going on behind the scenes and then form strong opinions about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It's also, I guess this is my one gripe with Peter Schiff as well. He only allocates 5% of his fund to gold. And to make matters worse, it almost like I'd give him a pass. Not saying I don't invest in gold myself. I don't advocate for people doing that. I think Bitcoin's far superior. But he even's like, oh, like you don't want banks confiscating your wealth. But then he even discloses that the gold that he has is stored in a vault at a bank. So it's like, he's like, yeah, 95% stocks outside the United States. And I've kind of heard his pitch before. It's like, dude, they're closing down your bank account. Your stocks are included in that. Yeah, they're closing your bank account. That's included. The gold that's in the vault in the bank is included in that. So it's like sure. he's exposed to all those risks, which I just find baffling, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. If there's anything else you want to add there.
Well, just, if you own stocks or you own gold, really all that you have is an IOU for those assets. So again, when the government decides that you're a bad person, you did a bad thing, and they don't want you to have access to those funds, they will manufacture a reason for taking those funds or limiting your access to them. It's a huge problem. But let's keep going. We got a lot of stuff that's happened over the weekend.
Yeah. So
one of the things, another thing that I thought was super interesting was that the trading volume for Bitcoin in Turkey is up. Inflation has increased by 78%, and trading volume on Bitcoin is up 48%. So there's another thing that we see happen is as people are confronted with the problems with inflation, with the problems with the government controlling access to their funds, they tend to explore other options. And Bitcoin is an incredible option for people all over the world. So that is a super huge thing as far as I'm concerned. We also saw this in Nigeria. When Nigeria inflation has been skyrocketing, and when they tried to ban Bitcoin, it actually increased the use of Bitcoin in the country because it is decentralized, it is disintermediated, and it allows people to take control of their finances. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. I think a lot of people go to Bitcoin out of necessity. We as Bitcoiners advocate for people getting it there. We see it as a necessity, but if you can get there before a hyperinflation event or before your government confiscates your funds, like Peter Schiff, like the Canadian truckers, whether you're a Russian person living in Russia and due to the negligence of your rulers or the people running your government, you were shut off from basically the SWIFT system by the US and no fault of your own. You're just a normal Russian citizen. You go to work on Monday, go home, have dinner with your family, watch TV, whatever it may be. You were punished because of something that a leader of your country does. So, governments are third party risks as well. Not we talk about jurisdictional arbitrage all the time, not just in the country that you're from, but the United States has this benefit, and I know we're in the United States, but anywhere in Europe or the United States, we kind of have 50 states within the United States. Europe has a bunch of different countries in the EU zone that they're linked but different. So you're trying to find the best jurisdiction to live in is very beneficial. There's also the one point I wanted to mention for Nigeria as well. Nigeria banned it, and to P's point, the volume or the peer-to-peer market went parabolic. There was actually an arbitrage trade that it was trading at a premium in Nigeria compared to the United States. Obviously, I do not know anyone in the ground in Nigeria, but in theory, I could have been sending them Bitcoin. They could be selling it in the peer-to-peer market, and we could me and that person could be making money on the spread, like buying. I think Bitcoin. It was back when it was like Bitcoin was 55K, but Bitcoin was trading at the Nigeria premium of 78K, like in US dollar terms. So there was an arbitrage opportunity. Obviously, I didn't have this network set up, and it was only for a short time because the Nigerian government, to P's point, they realized they were losing money literally in tax revenue that they couldn't stop. So they reopened it up and they're like, oh, no. We banned it, dude, but we're good. We want you to use it. Just let us know when you use it so we can collect our tax revenue. That's what we want, dog. So I don't know if there's anything you want to comment there, P.
No, I mean, it's tales all the time, right? Like the number of times governments have tried to ban Bitcoin and then they backpedal it. Nigeria especially has a long history of doing this where they're like, oh, fuck Bitcoin. And then they're like, oh shit, we don't have control of this. We're losing, as you said, tax revenue. So then they re-enable it. I'm numb to it at this point. Governments can try to do whatever they want to do. It's not going to affect Bitcoin in the large scale.
Yeah.
But let's keep going, man.
Yeah, definitely. So the next story, Core Scientific, also known as the stock ticker CORZ, Cores, sold 7,202 Bitcoins last month at an average price of $23,000 per Bitcoin to raise about 167 million in USD in capital. The company said proceeds from the sale were mainly used for payment toward ASIC servers, capital investments in additional data center capacity, and debt repayments. Core said it will continue to self-mined Bitcoin to pay operation expenses, fund growth, and retire debt and maintain liquidity. P, is there anything that you want to touch on in that statement alone there? Oh, you're muted there.
Can you hear the dog barking in the background?
I can hear the dog, but now I can hear you.
Oh my God. All right. Take it for a second. I'm going to deal with this dog. I'll be right back. This is an important story I want to talk through.
All right. Sounds good. I'll be there in a second. Yeah, so it's very interesting. I mean, I can just talk on the words that the CEO mentioned. We are working to strengthen our balance sheet and enhance liquidity to meet this challenging environment and continue to believe that we'll be operating in excess of 30 basically hashes per second, ecto hashes per second in our data centers by the year end of 2022. So that was the CEO, Mike Levitt, said in a statement. We remain focused on executing our plan while taking advantage of distressed opportunities that may arise. It looks like P is back. How's it going?
Apologies for that.
No worries.
My dog is, trying to defend her property. It's got, he's fighting flies, whatever he's doing. Anyway, the point is, this is a pattern that we've talked about recently on the show. We've seen it happening in the bull markets, right? Mining companies tend to lever up to do everything they can to, establish their operations. And what happens is you see more and more mining operations expand out. They take loans on, they sign contracts for power that are higher than they should be. And then as we enter the bear market, miners get just washed out. And so what we're seeing here is Core Scientific is having to basically sell their shit in order to stay in operations. And we're going to see more and more and more of this happen as we go forward. So it's all part of the process, but it's always interesting to see which miners have the most robust strategies overall, which ones got greedy, and then which ones end up having to sell all their ASICs to the miners that use more efficient systems and were willing to sign, were more careful in the power contracts that they signed.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I guess, Pete, there's an idea that I was talking about in Cafe Bitcoin this morning that I'd love to bounce off you, to be honest. So, one thing that was always interesting to me, and I understand like Michael Saylor's idea when you're running a business, and if he how do I wear this? He did a debt offering against his company to buy more Bitcoin, long duration, like 7 years was the bond offering. Then he basically took some of his Bitcoin and he took out like a 4% loan against the 100% of the Bitcoin. And like his margin call would be, if he put all the Bitcoin up as escrow, is like 3,000 or around that point that he can get liquidated. With miners, though, it gets very interesting because at some point they need to pay the piper. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing your electricity for your ASICs and also to acquire ASICs, you need to sell Bitcoin at some point to pay those bills. And I understand, like in a bull market, everyone can keep getting more and more debt as Bitcoin's price is appreciating. Like you can take out like more loans against it as it keeps going up. But when it reverses, like the debt comes out, you need to pay in Bitcoin or you need to pay in USD by liquidating that Bitcoin. And I guess my long-winded response is Bitcoin miners are obviously always searching for zero cost energy. And what I mean by that is if they could get free power to mine Bitcoin, they still have the cost then of buying more ASICs, improving their rack space, improving the wiring. Like at some point, you need to spend money, whether that is Bitcoin that we see as money or USD as money or debt repayments as USD. So like at some point, they need to pay their amount. So when Bitcoin miners were taking out all these like leverage against it, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out in the long run. Like I thought that maybe if they were smart enough that they took a small enough leverage position or loan against their Bitcoin, like Michael Saylor, they would be fine. But anything in excess of like 5%, 10%, like if you see an 80% drawdown, that gets dangerous where you can get liquidated or get your loan called. So my question to you, P, is like for miners specifically, maybe not for cash flowing businesses like an Apple, like a MicroStrategy like that. At some point, do they always need to be net sellers at some point to pay their bills? I personally think they do because you can't keep kicking the can down the road. Like this is such a fiat mentality. I don't know if you want to expand on that. Sorry for the long-winded response.
I mean, no. I don't have a super nuanced take here, but I think that, and I don't know what the specific levels are, but I think this is a totally normal part of the Bitcoin cycle. Miners are always trying to, and we see this to your point. Like this is it's a bit of a fiat. It is very much a fiat game. We see this in hedge funds. We see this in kind of all industries as bull markets are happening. Whether it's in the 4-year cycles of Bitcoin, or whether we're talking about the the larger macroeconomic environment, and that is of course the price of Bitcoin is of course tied to that. You are always trying to demonstrate the fastest growth you possibly can and to be perceived as the golden goose, the darling child of the space, and that creates really interesting pressures. And especially these large publicly traded companies, they have to maintain, or they choose to maintain, this image that they are going to be the next big bet. And then as we enter these bear markets, people get washed out. So there are always miners that are more measured in their approach, that are willing to have slower growth in order to guarantee their operations going forward. And then there's those that take larger risks. And I just think it's all part of the process. And nobody knows exactly what the price of Bitcoin is going to do at any given time. And so, yeah, you it's always a competitive market with this broad risk spectrum. That's all you get.
Yeah, I guess the next story that I got. So on Thursday evening, so this was January 1st, I believe, or not January, July 1st. My apologies. No, June 30th. That evening, President Bukele of El Salvador bought 80 more Bitcoins. I forget what the total price of that was then, at a cost of 19,000 each, according to a tweet from Bukele.
Did
What
you
was the
just add
cost?
an S to Bitcoin? Did you just say
I may
Bitcoins?
have slipped on Bitcoins.
How dare you?
To
It's always
80.
Bitcoin. Singular, plural,
Actually, they
say it.
said it in the article. So hold on a sec. It's Bitcoin, but yeah, they said 80 Bitcoins on Thursday. So I was reading what they wrote here. So Bloomberg reported that on Thursday. So they bought 80 more Bitcoin at a price of $19,000 a piece. President Bukele did. This morning, our friends at the New York Times said a poor country made Bitcoin national currency, but the bet is not paying off, which is very funny because they definitely are like they're like calling it a failure, but he's still buying more Bitcoin. I will bring up the one point that they say is that their bonds, so Bitcoin or El Salvador's bond issuings, are getting very close to. Let me read this. National dollar bonds are trading deep in distressed territory. So I guess they're kind of looking at it at loan repayments and such. Or I guess he's acquiring more debt to do so, or tax revenue. I guess anything you want to add there, and then I want to add the flip side of that, basically. All right. So while that's being said, El Salvador has seen over $1 billion roll into the country in terms of investment from foreign and domestic investors in the country. So that whether that's real estate, whether that's people coming to the area, whether that's uh, basically people visiting and stuff like that, as well as El Salvador has seen in just this year alone, $53 million in remittance has been sent just through July 1st via Bitcoin. So that's, removing Western Union. And I think we've brought up on this show before, a lot of emerging nations or emerging economies or I don't want to say third world, but emerging nations, basically, a lot of times Western unions or banks are places where gangs hang out because they will see someone going to redeem a remittance payment and then they'll basically extort them. And either you pay them, 10, 15% on top of whatever Western Union charged you. And if you don't pay them, you get beaten up and they steal your money anyway, or you pay them and they keep you safe. Where Bitcoin, you could be at home as long as you have an internet connection. You can send Bitcoin to an address and they can get payment without getting attacked. They save time. A lot of times, Western unions in countries are multiple hours away that you got to take a bus to get there. So $53 million of capital in terms of Bitcoin has flowed in through remittances alone in just the first 6 months of this year. P, I guess anything you want to ad lib there or add to that?
No, man. I mean, you summed it up.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing they will say in the article, they were claiming that Bitcoin has tumbled 63% since Bukele first purchased in early September of last year. The government doesn't publish data on its cryptocurrency holdings, but they were doing a calculation of the number of purchases, and it just shows the price per Bitcoin. Obviously, this is at the lowest cost of this buy of 19K. I guess we don't have to comment on the things that, whether Bukele is good or bad for Bitcoin. I know with him being a dictator, that's a little leery. But I think what he's trying to do is trying to help his citizens get out of poverty. And it's very funny, his banter with the IMF being like, you got to take this Bitcoin out of here and you got to do all this. It's very, very interesting. Anything you want to add there as color, P?
Yeah, I mean, look, as I've said so many times, but before on the show, the beauty of Bitcoin is that it is a system where the incentives align, right? So Charlie Munger, octogenarian, famous crypt keeper, has a great quote, which is, you show me the incentives and I will show you the outcome. And what we're seeing, or rather the way that Bitcoin works, is the things that benefit individuals also benefit the larger network. So Bukele is doing his thing. He's trying to benefit himself. He is of course trying to benefit his country as well, but those actions also benefit the larger network. Now, the IMF has a very, very vested interest in shitting on Bitcoin and in demonizing any entities that are embracing Bitcoin. And that is what is happening here, right? So separate from everything else that's happening in El Salvador, the IMF and the ECB and all the centralized entities that are threatened by Bitcoin are trying to shit all over El Salvador's decision, which is ultimately going to be a positive thing for the country because that will further validate Bitcoin. So you always have to be looking at all these stories and the things that you're hearing in mainstream media through that lens. Like, why are they telling this story? Who is pulling their strings and why are they doing it? So there are a lot of things around the issuance of the Bitcoin bonds in El Salvador that are like, but at the same time, everything you're going to be hearing from the IMF is going to be just, regardless of the actual situation on the ground, designed to affect the public perception of this strategy and to cast it in a very negative light, even though adopting Bitcoin as legal tender is a uh, incredibly innovative thing, and we're going to see more and more countries, more and more entities start doing this as we go forward in time.
Definitely. I got one last news. So while some miners are selling their Bitcoin, others are taking out more debt. I don't know, like we just kind of talked about how this is a good thing or bad thing, but Terra Wolf is adds 50 million in debt to build data center infrastructure. They are, I'm not sure where they're based out of in terms of their headquarters, but they have a facility in upstate New York as well as in Pennsylvania. So they had previous two loans were for 123.5 million, as well as another $50 million loan. That interest that accrues at 11.5% and matures on December 1st of 2024. So they're expecting, I guess, to be in a bull market by a little over 2 years from now, 2.5 years from now. What they're trying to do is they're trying to pick up cheap Bitcoin miners. So what people don't understand with the dynamics of Bitcoin, aside from the price, Bitcoin's price, ASIC miners also, in a way, laggard Bitcoin's price, meaning that as the price goes up, people are trying to get miners, or I guess it ratchets up first and then it falls later. So basically, right now, Bitcoin miners are dropping in price because hash rate keeps going up, but the miners can't cover their debt repayments. They either have to sell Bitcoin, further pushes down the price, or it gets the price is so low that they need to start unplugging miners, because it's basically, if you have S9s, like right now, I think to be profitable it needs to be like 3 cents or 3.5 cents, which is very, very low. I mean, residential, if you're mining in a home in the United States, I think average prices are like 11% or 9%, somewhere in that range. So you're well in the red if you're doing that. So what Terra Wolf is basically doing is they're taking $50 million loan. Right now you can get like an S9. Last time I checked last weekend, or on Thursday or Friday last week, I think it was like $200 or $300. The S19, which is the newest model from Bitmain, the S19, was going from my buddy who mines. He bought his for 14,000. Guess what they're selling for now, P? Take a guess.
10,000.
They're selling for
Holy
$3,500.
shit.
So the S19s are following Bitcoin's price now. And miners, a lot of times, not only can you take out collateral against your Bitcoin, this is really done by the financial world. They took out collateral against their ASIC miners.
Yep.
So this is kind of the distraught things that we saw with Compass mining and with Dynamics mining. They took out a loan against their ASIC miners. But not only if your Bitcoin stack goes down in value, if your ASIC miners go down in value, then the bank's like, hey, it's like when you take out a loan against your house. If you stop making payments, the bank uses that house as collateral to confiscate it. You go into foreclosure, they claim the house, and they sell it up. Hopefully they recoup the money that they loaned you, or at least break even. That's what they love. If they can make money, good for them. But the ASIC miners are falling now with Bitcoin's price going down while the hash rate's still going up. So it's getting more difficult to mine Bitcoin, but the price is going down or remaining flat.
Yep.
So this gets to it's pinching into the miners' profits. So basically, your miners could be underwater. You took out a loan for $14,000. You can only sell it for $3,500, but you have a loan at 100% of the value or 50% loan to value. So a lot of the financial institutions are knocking on their door. This is where the contagion gets interesting, though. Like Compass Mining, like let's just say you and me, P, are hosting people's miners. But if the facility we're hosting them in, we don't own, that facility could say, you didn't pay your electric bill, so we're not giving you miners. But then the bank's calling us asking for the ASIC. So the bank's like, well, we're going to go to your facility and take it. It's like, well, it's not our facility. So the cops get in a very weird position of being like, wait, so you owe the bank money and the bank needs the miner that you have, but the miner that you have is at another facility. So it gets very weird in this contagion.
It's really, really difficult to confiscate them. Yeah,
exactly. Because then technically it's illegal to go on the property of someone that you owe money if they don't want you to be there. So it gets very, very hairy. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I guess I don't know if I have any more stories. I'll look for potentially one more, unless you got anything else.
No. I mean, I think you summarized it really well. This is a new space. That is to say, it's not a new space, but it is a constantly evolving one. And there's these new financial instruments and types of loans that are being created. And when when the larger macroeconomic environment is such as it is, and when the price of Bitcoin goes down, everything gets kind of, the tree starts to get shaken, and the higher risk strategies tend to fall apart. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, contagion. And there's another exchange that's based in India called Vald, and they recently just froze their people's account. So if you have Bitcoin on that exchange, you cannot pull it out, just like we saw with Celsius and we're seeing with others. And again, I want to say, if you have Bitcoin on an exchange, you do not actually own that Bitcoin. You own an IOU. You are trusting the exchange to give you your Bitcoin back. By the way, this is exactly the same thing with stocks. You used to be able to like hold a stock certificate or a bond certificate, and if you had that piece of paper, you owned that thing. That is not the case anymore. When you go and buy stocks or bonds on Fidelity, you don't actually own the stock. You own an IOU from Fidelity to give you the value that you've made on that stock. So this exists in the traditional financial world as well. But if you have Bitcoin, Bitcoin is designed to be a thing that you can control. You can have full ownership of it if you have your private keys. So if you have your Bitcoin on an exchange, take it off. Make sure you educate yourself. Don't just like randomly go crazy and pull it all off and then like lose it. There's incredible resources out there. Read through some of those guides. There are some on Bitcoin Magazine. There are some on they're just all over. You can find them. BTC Sessions has a bunch of great ones. But take responsibility for your own financial freedom. Move your money, your Bitcoin that is, off exchanges, because we are seeing this cascade of exchanges basically freezing funds. So do not get caught in that situation.
P, I want to make your Tuesday, so I got one last thing for you. So, and this is for the audience as well. So, hear this out. About to share my screen. Check out this, guys. So, have you guys heard of Bank of America? Pretty infamous bank in the United States.
Who has not
Bank of
heard of Bank of
America's
America?
global research posted this chart in one of their research, I think particularly dealing with just macro conditions and macro assets, Bitcoin being one of them. They posted the chart of the Bitcoin bubble, Bitcoin's dead, Bitcoin bubble, Bitcoin's dead, Bitcoin bubble, Bitcoin's dead, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was very funny when, I don't want to say we've won, but it's interesting that one of the biggest banks in the world is now posting charts like this in their Bank of America global research. So if anyone says memes, don't roll the world, they do. P, I don't know if there's anything else to add to that, or if you thought that was a good way to conclude this session of news and notes this Tuesday.
I just want to talk about the amazing article that our very own Pete Rizzo published on Forbes, talking about Bitcoin maximalism, going into the ins and outs of and responding to what has happened with Nick Carter recently. Nick Carter was a kind of a darling child of the Bitcoin space. Owner of Three Arrows Capital, creator of Three Arrows Capital, and basically he has been making alternative investments in aspects of the ecosystem that are not Bitcoin. And he had a very sort of emotional reaction to being called out to that. And Pete Rizzo wrote an amazing piece for Forbes. We're going to be having a Twitter space later today talking about it. But if you haven't read that piece, it is a fantastic, very articulate rebuttal to the arguments that Nick Carter has been making. So super excited for that space later. And yeah, I think it's an interesting thing that we're seeing. This happens again every time, every bull market, bear market cycle. You got to slay your heroes. People that were viewed as saints in the space, when they do something that's not Bitcoin, that does not support the things that we all find so important and so essential, you get called out for it, and that's what we're saying here. And it's all part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's it that I got for news right now for news and notes. P,
Yeah.
do you have anything else yourself?
No, man. Let's call it a show. What's happening next today? Can you give the people some insight into what else is going to be going on?
Yeah, so unfortunately, our guest was not able to join us today for right after this. So we will be postponing his interview to another date. Something came up last minute in his home life. So unfortunately, we were not able to replace him. It was very last minute, like I said, before we went live. At 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be hosting a Twitter Spaces with Pete Rizzo talking about Bitcoin maximalism is dead. Long live Bitcoin maximalism. A couple people had some gripes with the article about Pete Rizzo and what he said. So it'll be very interesting. I guess it'll be a moderated debate between Pete Rizzo himself and a couple people that had some problems or some issues with the things that he wrote in the article. And that's pretty much it for us today. Pete, anything else you want to add before we close out here?
No, man. Again, I want to say, if you have your Bitcoin on an exchange, learn how to take full custody of it. Bitcoin is about radical personal financial responsibility. Get your money off the exchanges. Not financial advice. Do your own research. Don't get fucked.
I have two more things then. So get a copy of Bitcoin Magazine's latest issue, the censorship resistant issue. I believe, how many languages do we have it in? 7 languages of various ways to get your key, like to basically set up a hot wallet, take self custody, and put it into your own personal custody. So I think we have it in 7 or 9 languages, basically how to be censorship resistant. P is holding it up right now. It is beautiful. The cover art is incredible. We really love it. It's something that we've worked very hard on. It is also the thickest issue so far that we've done. Thick with 2 C's.
The true measure of success.
Yes, thickest.
Thickness. Yeah.
168 pages of pure signal. So really good.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is get your tickets to Bitcoin Amsterdam. Tickets are live. You can pay with fiat or Bitcoin. It will be in Amsterdam from October 12th through the 14th. An awesome venue. It's right next to the canal. So looks really incredible. We will be having more information dropping about speakers this Thursday from our very own CK Snarks, General Manager of Bitcoin Magazine, as well as George McHale. Talking about the event. So he's responsible for tickets. So we're really excited for that. We're actually only 99 days out. Can you believe that, P? 99 days out from Bitcoin Amsterdam. It is coming up quick.
Fast.
Yeah. So that is it. Guys, thank you so much for watching our show. We will be back tomorrow. Q's coming back tomorrow, right?
He is indeed.
Q will be back in the house. We'll be back with news and notes with Q and P. We've got a bunch of awesome guests tomorrow. We have David Puel from ARK Invest, as well as we have Dylan LeClaire and Sam Rule, and then
Seed Signer.
Seed Signer.
Talking all about his incredible product and the importance of, again, taking control of your own keys and the different ways to do that. It's going to be good.
So that's it. Well, that's a wrap. Send us out, P.
All right. My friends, thank you so much for joining us. Use code BMLive to get 10% off of everything in the store. As Chris said, Bitcoin Amsterdam is going to be incredible. If you are in Europe, if you're going to travel to Europe, get your tickets now before ticket prices go up. The magazine's amazing. We'll see you tomorrow.